If I walked into your business tomorrow, I wouldn't open Salesforce first. And that might sound strange, because that's exactly what most people would expect. They expect me starting looking at dashboards and reports to see if I can find a problem somewhere. They'll expect me to analyze the system. But here's the reality. The problem with Salesforce is rarely Salesforce itself. It's how it's being experienced and it's how it's being used. So today I want to walk you through a thought experiment. If I took over your Salesforce tomorrow, what would I actually do first? Not technically, not from a configuration perspective, but from a business, people, and behavior perspective. So I want to talk you through my top 10 priorities. And I can tell you already, very few of them will actually start involving touching the system. And before I go into the list, let me set a little bit of the tone, because I'm not talking about blaming anybody. I'm not talking about pointing fingers at users or at admin developers or at leadership. It's about something more simpler. Most businesses don't really have a Salesforce problem. They have a clarity problem. Most don't understand really how their system is being used on a day-to-day basis, where it's slowing your users down, or why adoption isn't where you would expect it to be. So instead, most businesses will go to the solution of building more features, more automation, more complexity. And every time you do that, you move further away from the real issue. So if I would walk in tomorrow, what would I do? I would pause, I would observe, and then I would try to reset. And the very first thing that I would do, and that might be quite uncomfortable, I would stop delivery. Because most businesses feel like progress equals building. But here's what I've seen a lot. If your foundation is unstable, building faster isn't going to help. It just spreads the problem further along. So I would try to pause new features, new automations, new enhancements. Not forever, but long enough to start asking a very simple question. Are we building on something that actually works? Because if the answer to that is no, everything you're adding is just layering confusion on top of confusion. Next thing I will do is I'll go and watch your users. I will try and sit with them, and as many as possible. I observe how they navigate the system, where they hesitate. Because reporting will tell me a little bit about what is happening, but the users will show me why. And we'll start to notice things like hesitation before clicking, switching between tabs constantly, copying information from somewhere else, maybe even avoiding certain fields altogether or certain tasks. And those are the moments that matter, because they reveal the gap between what the system expects and what the users are actually doing. Next, I would start asking a slightly different question. How hard is the system to think through? Not just use, but understand. Because many Salesforce environments aren't really technical broken. They're just mentally exhausting. So many fields, a lot of steps to go through, a lot of decisions that the users have to take every single day, every single time they go into the system. And every decision you're going to add, it increases this hesitation. And this hesitation will lead to slower processes, inconsistent data, and eventually disengagement from your users. So if someone has to stop and think every time before they use Salesforce, that is not a training gap alone. That's a design and experience problem. Now, my fourth priority will be that most businesses would say, well, we have a data quality problem. I look at it slightly different. You don't really have a data problem, you have a data behavior problem. So I would start asking questions like, why are your users skipping these fields? Why are they entering placeholder values? Why does data break down at certain points? Because users don't really randomly decide to start using bad data. They just do it because they don't see the value, or they don't understand the purpose, or the process doesn't support them. So instead of really starting to clean the data, I focus on understanding the behavior behind it. My fifth priority, I would reassess user capability. We finally come to a training element. And this is where I would start slowing things down even more. Because most businesses will think about, yeah, we trained our users. And what they really mean is, well, we deliver training, but that's not the same thing as training your users. So I will start to look at things like confidence of your users, their decision-making ability, consistency in execution. Because true capability means a user can navigate the system without second guessing themselves. And if they can't do that, then the system is not being fully used, no matter how many sessions were delivered. Next, I will start to zoom in on what I call critical moments. And these are the moments where Salesforce actually matters. Not everything needs to be perfect, but some of the moments do. Things like handling a customer issue, updating a sales forecast, logging key interactions like our calls and our emails with our customers, resolving a case quickly and correctly. These are high pressure situations. And if Salesforce slows people down there or makes them confused, then the situation becomes such a way that frustration builds even faster. So I start focusing on making these moments simple, clear, and reliable. Because that's where trust in the system is either built or it will be lost. Now, next, I'll look at my super users, and I already talked about it in my previous podcast. More often than not, they're the most technical people in the room, and maybe even in your organization, without them being, so to speak, qualified Salesforce people. But I'm not looking for technical people. I'm looking for people who can influence others, explain clearly, support consistently. Because the super users isn't there to configure. They're there to bridge the gap between the system and the user. And if they can't do that, they're not going to help your adoption. They're unintentionally blocking it. Now, as 8th priority, I'll start looking at resetting the relationship with Salesforce. I will take a step back and look at something even bigger. How does your business actually see Salesforce? Because in many organizations, sales has become something like, well, it's a system we are using, or we actually have to use, which is even worse. It's the admin team's responsibility, something separate from the rest of the business. And that is where things start to drift. So I will try to reset that relationship, because Salesforce should be owned by the business, aligned to real processes, and embedded into daily work. It shouldn't be sit along on the side as an obligation. One before last is identify where Salesforce slows people down. Well, that sounds very simple, but it's incredibly powerful. So I actually would start to ask, where does Salesforce slow you down? And the answers are always revealing, because adoption doesn't fall overnight. It fades in small moments of friction, an extra click, an unclear field, a confusing layout. Individually, they seem small, but over time, that will create resistance. So I'll map those friction points, because that's where the real opportunity for improvement sits. And finally, I ask one of the most overlooked questions. What does good actually look like? Not in theory, not in documentation, but in reality. What does an organization mean by good usage? What does that look like? What does good data look like? What does good behavior look like? Because most businesses don't define this. They just assume it. And when you don't define good, well, you can't measure against it. You can't train towards it, and you definitely can't improve on it. So if I took over your Salesforce tomorrow, these things is what I would focus on first. I wouldn't look at features, definitely not AI yet, not automation. I would start looking at things like behavior, clarity, capability, and experience. Because once those are in place, everything else will become much easier. So before you build anything new, before you start investing in the next tool, before you try to fix your adoption with more technology, ask yourself this question. Do your people truly understand and comfortably use what you already have? If your answer to that is no, or I'm not sure, then whatever you're building next won't fix it. It will just hide it. So hopefully this episode made you pause and reflect. Because sometimes the most valuable thing you can do for your Salesforce environment isn't to add more, but it's just taking a step back. It's reassess and rebuild around your people.